This is HighIntensityBusiness.com with Lawrence Neal, helping you achieve your health and fitness goals. Become a great personal trainer and build your high-intensity strength training business.
Lawrence Neal here, and welcome back to HighIntensityBusiness.com. Today's guest is the one and only David Landau. David has been an exercise practitioner for over 40 years. He is a highly respected high-intensity trainer and considered one of the top personal trainers around today, which I wholeheartedly agree with. David runs his personal training business, Advanced Exercise, in Miami, Florida. David, welcome back to the show.
It's incredible to be back in spite of all the intensity we've had between us.
Yeah, I got to say, there was moments where I certainly wouldn't have expected us to be talking again on the podcast. Certainly had some tension on the internet, on social media, but I try not to take that stuff too seriously now. As we were kind of talking about in the build up to this, you're not the only one that does this, but you'll write something on social media that might vex someone. But then when you speak to them, face to face or over Skype, you quickly realize there's more context to what they were saying and that they're a nice person. And, you're not to take it too seriously, I think is the,
we
is the
forget
lesson.
about it real quickly and move on.
Right. Yeah. And I do appreciate some of the messages that you do post, because they're very thought provoking. Some of them do certainly get me thinking. I know that is certainly your objective. So David, in the build up to this, or in preparation for this, I listened to our first two podcasts we did together, which I think the first one was, like you said, 3 or 4 years ago. Second one was probably about a year or two ago, or probably same time, 3 years, something like that. And just so profound. I'm kind of listening to it and I'm thinking, I understand a lot of this now. It took me a while and I had to do a lot of my own research and obtain more experience, but pretty much everything you said in our, previous conversations is really, I really agree with now. I certainly understand a lot better. So I appreciate you sharing that with me back then. I'm just curious, what have you been up to since we spoke last? What's going on in your world? Let's start there.
Same stuff. Just enjoying training people more now than ever before. The training is not learned from reading books, as I told you before. The book stuff is fine. Observation of the trainee, the interaction between me and the trainee, and some of the things I've discovered as far as upside for training each individual. It's like I told you before, it's individual dosage. Each person requires different. The outcomes are specific to what you see from the individual. It takes two to tango. It's not a one-way street in exercise at all. You have to keenly observe the outcome, and the excitement after the training is fulfilling. So as far as training goes, it always is fun. It's never boring. It's finding out how I can get on their page, not them, mine. Like I told many people before, if you get in touch with me, you're intelligent enough to have a say in your exercise program. Many people use a one-way street. It's in the mainstream. It's even in high intensity, without sitting back and taking a look and listening 100% to the person you're training. So as far as training is concerned, it's still about the individual. It's not a collective approach. It's an individualistic approach.
Yeah, no, that really resonates with me, and I agree. And I was just thinking, if someone doesn't have the luxury of a, David Landau on their doorstep, or a high-level personal trainer, do you think that this can be this type of development, one's own understanding of their own body, what they require in terms of dosage, frequency of training, can that just be, obtained without the help of a personal trainer, just on, you know, someone's individual journey? Do you really feel like they need supervision, someone to kind of be there, like you say, it takes two to tango, to actually help them understand what they need?
The best approach I'm aware of, as far as getting close to that, is not by way of video Skype or video interaction. It's a consultation for a person in high intensity that is disappointed with their results. I had one guy call me, and I charged him. I don't remember what I charged him, not much. And we went over the mistakes that he was making. And I was able to correct those mistakes, and he was extremely thrilled because he was doing some of the things that weren't appropriate. Now, one of them I'll mention right now is running from machine to machine without hesitation. Now, we did that back in 1985. We were able to do workouts like that in 1985, and they were, I think, no more than 11 minutes. I literally ran from machine to machine. Hindsight's 2020. It just simply, now that I look at it, it was a part of the learning process and allowed me to just say this. It got me better at running from machine to machine. The things about so-called metabolic conditioning and all that other nonsense is just that. And that's why I have an individualistic approach. In the mainstream, they use 30 seconds in between sets, but it's a bunch of nonsense. It's non-specific to the individual that you're training. So the best thing is those listeners out there that really are disappointed in their progress or a little confused as to how go about their progress, regardless of who they're training with or whether they're training with anybody at all. If you consult with me, I can help you out. And I'm really concerned about your outcome. It's not like 1 hour of, and then I charge $160 per hour. No, we'll talk as long as you want so I can get the situation straightened out for you so it's worth your while.
I'd love to hear you, if you can, elaborate on any other mistakes you saw in that individual or other individuals that you talked to.
Being obsessed. One of them is being not obsessed, but geared into worrying about speed of movement. Okay. And that was a mistake I made for several years. So you have to make mistakes. You learn only when you learn from your mistakes. Your successes really reinforce superstition. So speed of movement, okay, I don't know what machines you work out on or anybody else works out on, but you literally have to try and hurt yourself on machines. I have a client that I do that literally can do a second up, a second down, for lack of a better description, and it looks crystal. It looks perfect. It looks so exact to her, and it's so beneficial to her. There's a history behind speed of movement, but Arthur sums up that history by saying, when in doubt about speed of movement, always move slower, obviously, but not too slow, or else you become good or adapted to the speed of movement. And the speed of movement is not the objective. Stimulus is. Stimulate, the catalyst. Try and make changes through stimulation. And if you lull yourself to death with, say, a 10-10 speed, for example, you might get some benefit. And there's a fantastic benefit that very people realize about 10-10. There is one great benefit there. But the mistake is besides that point, telling people how fast or slow to train.
Well, what's the
I'm not
benefit of
talking about
10-10 that you mentioned there, you hinted at?
it doesn't harm you. So therefore, if you're into sports,
Right.
in the sports, there's really no harm done with that. As far as most sports training today is a cultural disaster. It's just a mess. It's the worst I've ever seen it. So if you slow down, per se, and you strengthen and get a little stimulus out of your workout through speed of movement suggested training, you don't hurt yourself. And it's so minimalist is it allows you to practice the sport more, which is really beneficial in the long run.
So are you not also kind of suggesting that faster cadences are inherently more risky, even on machines, when you say that?
Well, I mean, I didn't say just yank the hell out of the weight, but if I'm just going to be generic here. I'm not going to be specific because specifics require individual interaction, like I told you before.
Mm-hmm.
1 or 2 seconds up or down, you're not going to hurt yourself.
The only reason I say this is because I'm concerned with the comment you made where it's like, I know you maybe were trying to be a bit tongue in cheek when you said try and hurt yourself on the machine, because there are some machines out there that are utter shit. And I know, in my gym, for instance, there's nothing in the way of Nautilus or Medex or anything like that. And some of the machines are really quite bad where, they're designed in a way where you could hurt yourself if you're not careful. So I just want to put that caveat in there because I don't want anyone listening to this and then going off and, moving at the fastest cadence possible on a shitty machine and hurting themselves, No.
I'm not suggesting exploding in movements. I'm suggesting that some people are going way too slow and they're lulling their workout. There's a lull in that aspect of training slow. There's a lot of observation. I've been to so many gyms throughout the United States. I've been at the Mecca of Bodybuilding, Gold's Gym. I watch people train. Whenever I went to super slow facilities, when they went back into the office, this is way back in the day, I used to observe training while they're sitting back talking. I watch the trainers. I watch everything around me. If I go to clubs, if I'm contracted at a particular club, which is right next door, to do something, one eye remains on the trainee and one eye just watches the territory around me. And I've not seen immediate hurt or injury on people. You rarely see an injury in the gym. But if you, no pun intended, if you cross over to CrossFit, all bets are off because that's not an exercise program. It's a sport.
I agree.
And it's gross sport at that.
I challenge you though on I hear what you're saying. Like you don't often see like an acute injury, right, in the gym, even with haphazard form, right? But do you not think that if someone is exercising incorrectly, perhaps not using good form or moving too much to the extremes, for instance, that they're going to cause unnecessary wear and tear that could result in injury, which might then happen when they're doing something outside the gym. So we want to avoid that as well, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously gross movements in the gym. I'm not talking about gross movements. I'm saying that you shouldn't move as slow as suggested.
Right. Okay.
Scenarios. The reason why I'm going to dip into this a little bit, the reason why you had, I don't know if I went over with you on this aspect, the reason why you had the famous 2 seconds up, 4 seconds down was basically not even an objective in Nautilus training. It became that after Ellington Darden in his first book was describing if it takes 2 seconds to lift a weight, it should take 4 seconds to lower it. He was referring to negative work. He wasn't referring to a training speed protocol. You read the original book, you'll see, you'll say, oh, I can see where that came, and it morphed into it. But remember, Nautilus was a multi-million-dollar company, okay? And once they came up with that as a 2.4, it kept them out of people misusing the equipment, okay? Misusing it, in other words, jerking the weight up and down and whatnot. They had a generic across the board that eventually morphed into the super slow protocol, which was taken from Bob Hoffman in 1962, who had already suggested slow training since the late 1920s. That's a historical reference that I use when asked. But no, I'm not suggesting Lawrence yanks the weight up and down. But don't be forlorn into moving extremely slow like most people suggest. Ease yourself out of that.
Yeah, I have been doing so since we spoke, and since I've had conversations with your colleagues. I have moved away from doing that. I will let the, like you said, gauge the muscle and allow the speed of movement to really express itself organically, but not be the objective, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just going back to you and your business for a second. I'm just curious, last time we spoke, you had it sounds like you had quite a nice balance going, and I like to talk about this stuff because we have a number of obviously, personal trainers, business owners that listen to this, where you had about 20 to 30 clients. You did maybe, I think 30 workouts a week. Do you still have that kind of lifestyle going?
Just about that. Yeah.
Do you have it? So you suggested that you do some consultations on the side. Do you have any other interests outside that? Any other jobs or businesses that you run at all? Or is it just the personal training stuff?
Just training. I deal in buying and selling books as an adjunct. Have fun with that. I buy and sell stuff. It's fun. I find I got into finding a lot of signed books and things of that nature.
What, in bodybuilding or just general philosophy?
In general. Some of the weightlifting books I've sold over the years that, I've collected too much paper, but and lots of different things. But yeah, that's what I do. I do what I like to do, not what I have to do.
Yeah, and I owe you a bit of an apology because I think in the second episode we did together, I said I would try and get over there at some point, and it's still very much on my it's still very much on my bucket list to do that. I would love to be trained by you, and I would love any excuse to come to Miami, Florida, which is where you're located, isn't it? So, must be pretty beautiful there most of the time, I imagine, weather-wise. You always seem to be boasting a nice tan as well, I noticed.
Yeah, that's funny. I didn't even know I was tan. I'm a man of color, I guess.
Did you grow up there, or did you move there later on in life?
I grew up in Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Youngstown, Ohio. Yeah. Was friends with former WBA lightweight champion. Still am friends. I haven't talked to him lately. Ray Boom Boom Mancini.
Right. Okay. So, how did you end up getting over to Miami then? What brought you here?
Well, I was running a Nautilus Center in Pittsburgh, and it was cold and it was bitter and it was drab, and I took a vacation in Florida and decided to make that change back in 1984.
And then never turned back after that.
Well, as long as you write your ticket to travel anywhere, I guess it's okay.
Cool. So, I do want to move on to some other things related to training, but I'm just very curious. Why did you decide? Because it sounds to me like you were quite happy having your training studio, a kind of handful of clients for you to work with, but it doesn't sound like you had the aspiration to grow that business beyond that. Is that correct?
I'm a purist.
All right.
And as a purist, I was told by a trainee, the thing is that you're not a promoter, you're a purist. And it's odd for people, like I said before, you have to have much more than half a brain to train with me. But I'm a purist, and I'm interested in what works. So, when you present this out to the public, it's not in the culture. I've built some business out of it, but I've always been interested in cause and effect relationship. I've always been fascinated by what worked. And as I got more fascinated, I found out I ran away from the culture. I can present my professional image in a gymnasium with my clipboard, chart, precise instruction. And I look like a guy from outer space as far as that's concerned, because people are doing the most ridiculous things in the world. So back in the day, Nautilus was the culture. It was the correct culture. It was a phenomenal culture. But as everybody saw that Nautilus training and trainees were making the money, they decided, not that they're not today, but they decided to come in and go for the money. So the culture has changed. And as Dr. Doug McGuff recently stated, I think he took it from me, it's because I wrote 2 articles on it. It's a certain return to the primitive. I stole that from my Ayn Rand, by the way. I kind of changed up a little bit. But I wrote 2 articles on that, and you notice it's a return of the primitive with so much of the activity-based nature and the machismo and all this other nonsense that creates something like a CrossFit with a lack of a better contender. That is number one that we have to deal with out there. So again, getting back to it, I've been a purist, so I've always been about trying to do the right thing. And a lot of people disagree with what I have to say. One of the other contenders there that I forgot to mention is one of the other derivatives is the battle ropes. And that's another ridiculous entity there. That's another return of the primitive. So being a purist, you've probably seen it on Facebook where I called it an imbecile's dream. It's insanity. But
I saw that.
People are just so ignorant, if not outright stupid. They continue to do this thing, and it'd be better off being paid by going out, getting picked up by the bus at the end of the street and going out and doing an hour of manual labor. At least you get paid for it.
Yeah, I always worry about people's shoulders with battle ropes. The wear and tear on the shoulder.
It's making you better at something that you don't need. Yeah, that's all it is.
Yeah. Yeah, and to people that don't know better, it just looks very impressive to them. It looks like they're working hard, but yeah, I mean,
well,
it's a crazy world.
It's hard too, but he gets paid for it.
Say that again.
The manual labor works hard, and he gets paid.
Yeah. Well, the people doing the battle ropes, the Instagram influencers out there, they're technically getting paid too for doing that. It's sometimes why I feel very fortunate to have fell into this world of high intensity training, because, it educated me on why that's not a good idea. But then it also makes me sometimes baffled as to why, more people aren't aware of that. But hey, I think that's why, at the end of the day, David, that's kind of why, or one of the reasons why I think, you and I exist, and everyone else in this industry, is to do our best to do our part in terms of educating the masses on, what is safe and effective. And I know it's very frustrating because CrossFit is still huge, and there's lots of, bad stuff out there. But I do feel like we are making progress, albeit slowly. But time will tell.
You see, CrossFit has something that we don't have. As I told you before, if I didn't tell you before, they have an injury form. We don't have that. They have an injury form where they can hope to find a cure to their injury. They want to find out how they can get back to what injured them to begin with.
People just they associate. Now I've spoken to, I know a number of people who are like, you know, high intensity training fanatics who got here through CrossFit, you know? So there are probably certain people doing CrossFit who will never get out of that and will have an injury and do exactly what you say. How can I recover from this injury and go back to doing clean and jerks and snatches and all sorts of stuff like that? You know, but there are a cohort of people that do CrossFit who are waiting and maybe unknowingly looking to be saved, you know, and maybe unfortunately they won't be saved from CrossFit until they have some kind of severe injury. But I know as a, you know, Bryce Lee, who's now a, you know, a HIIT trainer. He's got his own studio. He's been on the show. He's also a physical therapist. So he was doing CrossFit. And he went through that whole rigmarole before he came across HIIT. You know, I went for lunch with someone recently who again went through the same process. And so there is, you know, I feel quite hopeful that, you know, we just, as long as we continue to do a good job of communicating the benefits of HIIT, that we are going to convert more and more of those people, you know.
Yep, a few seconds, I can read you off something that I saved for you.
Sure.
There's a message I got from India on a trainee that is now in India for the year, and she said, again, sorry I'm cheating on you. She's using an Indian trainer stuff. It's hilarious because my trainer tried to get me to do 20 minutes of cardio in the beginning, and I was super firm to begin with and not doing any cardio. Now we crack up because he admitted to me that none of the trainers there do any cardio. It's ridiculous. It doesn't do shit for your body. But he says he has to push it on people because otherwise they don't think they're getting their money's worth. He says, I think this is coming to the point here that we're talking about. I think that the bodybuilders, trainers believe this is, but I think what sells is cardio. So he gave me an example of all the people that left the gym to do CrossFit, and so many came back with injuries. He says people in India do not follow trainers' advice. They do their own thing, and then they get injured. So it's a worldwide scourge. People, even in India, they're doing CrossFit, getting injured, and going back to what was beneficial for them to begin with, which was whatever strength training was employed, directing the work towards the body and not the activity.
This is a really interesting point because this is something that's come up in other podcasts and conversations I've had offline with people. It's this whole, you know, you've got a number of studios who do high intensity training. You know, they have MedX or Nautilus or they deliver some kind of HIIT protocol. But they are using other technologies that maybe you would not approve of, you know, maybe some high intensity interval training bikes, other technologies that maybe you would not think offer any additional benefit and are unnecessary, right? Without going into certain brands or models. Now, there is an argument some people make, which is, to your point there, people enjoy this. There's a psychological benefit. It's a gateway drug. You know, if I can get them through the door with this, I can get them doing strength training. But then there are purists like yourself, David, correct me if I'm wrong, who are like, no, that's all bullshit. I'm not going to do any of that. I'm just going to give them the medicine. And if they don't want that, then, you know, they can leave, kind of thing. They could, I'm not interested. So where do you stand on that? Because I feel like, the former group have a point in that there's value in providing something that's not going to really harm someone. Maybe it's not highly beneficial, but maybe it's not that harmful, and it just helps get them in the door, and then maybe they can educate them and provide the strength training. So how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm the purist. I'm the latter you just spoke about.
Yeah.
But I've heard, I had some messages sent to me not too far recently of clubs, high-intensity clubs, doing just that. Not only that, as they're using BOSU apparatus and other things because it's a cultural feed.
Right.
Okay. And basically they're doing it for attaining more numbers because the numbers you have to pay the rent.
Right.
Pay the rent, in other words. So you're going to have something. In other words, where's your treadmill? Where's your elliptical? Where's this? Where's the bike? Where's whatever? And once you some people just say, God, I got to pay the bill. So they do
a
it.
Slippery slope. Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
It's tough. I mean, if you admit to just that, it's okay. I mean, if you admit, we have to do it, Dave, because we have to pay the rent. I get it. I'm not going to come down on you with a bolt of lightning and crucify you. I understand, paying the rent. The rent's got to be paid. But again, like I said, I'm a purist, so I look at things a little differently than most. Yeah.
And I'm I really respect you for that. And there's another friend I have who's been on the show, Art Lichtfoot, who is similar to you and a purist. And, I find that very appealing. And I wish that people understood the value in a purist high intensity training approach, or more people understood it and it was more popular. And maybe one day it will be, who knows? So yeah, I appreciate your view on that. So yeah, it would be interesting.
As long as they're, stay, Dave, we have to do this. Okay, at least you're honest with me. I mean, you're not just saying, oh, so-and-so is doing this. No, I get these feeds from another purist that tells me. So, I mean, and I'm not mentioning any names, but I'm aware of it. And listen, high-intensity interval training simply makes you better at doing high-intensity interval training. The so-called cardiovascular benefits, I'm going to tell you right now, come from proper strength training. And remember, you're not addressing the heart, you're addressing your muscles, okay? And the person will tell you when they're ready to do the next one. You're not going to be telling them, okay, run over here and do this. Again, if you think that's the right thing to do, go knock yourself out. In my opinion, and I've been doing this a number of years, and I did this back in 85. I did it a long time ago, so I can look back on it. When you're ready for each exercise and the amount of exercises that you're doing, I have to find out when you're ready, not when I'm ready to tell you to go, but when you're ready to do it. Because otherwise, I've seen some interesting things occur when you give people more time to rest. I'm not saying rest forever. I'm just saying there's some interesting aspects to be learned from that.
Just on the rest period, I guess it's, as an individual, how do we know, well, is it just like an intuition? You're like, okay, you know what? I feel ready for the next exercise. And that's it, really. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, you shouldn't be told when to go to the next one. You should know when to say when.
Yeah.
When to start the next exercise. If you're out of breath, breathing like a racehorse, catch your breath. Some people, as I told you before, I've trained people who literally could be my shadow. The impact is not great. However, that being the case, they can do it, but you be surprised if you gave a person time by accident. I did it recently. I gave a person about 3 minutes because I had to step out for a second. When I came back, the ability to produce force and to do a set that was much longer than previously tracked was duly noted. So it's interesting. The late, great Joe Mullen, a Nautilus legend, once said if he had 8 hours to work out, he suggested this, he would work out 1 exercise per hour so that recovery was great. So he could go out and do each exercise, each one per hour for 8 hours, 8 exercises, and he can get an optimal workout doing that. It lends for people to think. That's why high intensity interval training is basically an event, an activity that you become good at. What it does is changes exercise into a skillful event. That's all it does.
Just going back to business for a moment. So is it fair for me to assume then that one of the reasons why you didn't scale or grow beyond your business is because you don't believe that you could as a purist? It wouldn't work. Which is a belief of many of some people in the community, yeah.
That's just the nature of me. I can press the issue and get more. What I'm trying to do with you a little bit here is to make it known that at one time I thought that consultations were a complete waste of time. I thought it was ridiculous. I haven't changed my mind because I could make money at it. I changed my mind because I know I could make a difference in people who were not satisfied or were confused or wanted to know what somebody who has been around the field and been well-traveled in the industry knows to help them with. And like I said, I have no time limit on this stuff. I enjoy thoroughly helping people, and I'm not, what do you charge per hour? That's, to me, it's ridiculous. To me, it's, if you're trying to help somebody, it's a wonderful time to allow them to get some information that they need. And if I'm the guy last I consulted, it's over the hour. I said, don't worry about it.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And as much time as we need to help you.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about pricing, but pricing is quite a personal thing, and I think it does depend on the value of your time or how much you value your time, and what else you have going on in your life. But I'm very happy to hear that you're doing that, David, because you've got enormous amount of knowledge, and I encourage the listeners, if this is the first time you're listening to me and David talk, go and listen to the first 2 podcasts, because I think you get a real good understanding of how you think about exercise. But obviously, it would pay them more to go further and actually have a call with you to analyze their own personal situation. But I'm really pleased to hear that you're doing that. And I know as you said there, you're not about making a ton of money, and you're quite happy to spend a lot of time with people. But I think you could actually create a very successful remote business in that if you wanted to, because I think that you have enormous demand.
It's just fun helping people and interacting with people and listening to people and allowing them to benefit.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's a great opportunity for people to connect with you about that. So, one of the things I did want to talk to you about, and something that concerns me, and I am going to play devil's advocate a little bit here, David, is I see a lot of us in high intensity training trying to promote the industry, trying to build businesses in different forms. Maybe the purists don't always approve in the forms they take, but they're still taking much of the fundamentals and principles from high intensity training. And they're trying to make a success in the world we have today and the limitations therein. And sometimes it bothers me, and I've seen you do this and others when they almost try to attack or criticize those who are trying to do so. Why do you do that when we just don't need that? You know, in high intensity training, we need as much support from each other as possible to help, you know, make high intensity training more popular, even if it's not doing so in a purist fashion.
Okay, first of all, let's define high intensity. Let's help you with the high intensity. High intensity is relative to each person. What appears to be high intensity with one wouldn't be with another. High intensity refers to not training, but effort. Effort placed into the training, okay? So, yeah, there are times. See, listen, I'm hot and cold. I can get on. I see something that really pisses me off, so I'm going to get off on it and just call it the way I see it. I can't help it. I'm bipolar. I go up and down, hot and cold.
Right.
I just go that route. I don't know. When I see something I disagree with it, I'm passionate enough to chase it down and call it the way I see it. Will it matter in the long run? No, I'm just a voice in the dark. If you think I'm that important a voice,
well, I think some people do. Some people do, but I think that's why they worry.
Myself that no, I've just considered myself another chip in the casino. But if I am that important, then you know what we can do? We can start helping them by you can call me up. You can call me up. And listen again. All right. Nobody has test-driven more equipment that I'm aware of than I have. I've researched the history of exercise equipment. It's a fascinating thing. It goes back to the very first cable-driven unit was in England, and that was developed in the 1820s with little weight stacks tied to pulleys and ropes. You used to put one of these big boys in your home, or maybe in the old gymnasiums for that matter. And it was introduced by Captain James Chiozo. Look it up. I'm the only one that has the book that I'm aware of other than libraries. And it was written in 1843. I think. So what I'm saying is I've researched and observed training, and I know what works in training. And barbells and machines work, but when you're a slave to the resistance, all bets off. It has to be volitional on the part of the trainee.
Well, look. Let me say this then. Look, I kind of know where you're going with this, and I know you have. I know you. I know you have your criticisms of things like ARX, and I completely appreciate that. Now, here's the thing, though. It's like compared to CrossFit, ARX is a dream. So,
well, it's like putting. It's not to be even put in the same sentence.
Exactly.
Everything's a dream compared to CrossFit.
Right. But I just think. I mean, maybe you don't agree with me on this, and that's fine. But I just think from your yeah. But a lot of people don't think that. A lot of people think CrossFit is exercise, right? But surely you would see something like ARX and go, okay, I don't like X, Y, and Z, but it's a move in the right direction in terms of getting people doing strength training as their primary mode of exercise and a high level of intensity. It's pretty safe as well, I would argue. Now, why wouldn't you rather? Is it that you? Because I know you're a man who says it like you see it, and I respect that massively, and I love your honesty. But sometimes I feel like you're too quick to criticize as opposed to support them. And this is just one example.
That's where the phrase "brutally honest" comes.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I can be brutally honest. It's just in my DNA. All right, let me put it this way, okay? The chapter's not written yet there. Let me be honest with you, okay? I planned to visit somebody, and I couldn't get up there. Because of this interview, I was going to give you guys, the ARX or whatever you call it, I was going to give it a second chance. I know somebody who has one, and I wanted to go this weekend, but he wasn't available. Last weekend he was available. I couldn't get up there. I was busy with training and stuff. Sometimes the training falls over into the weekend, and I have to take care of these people. You know, their first priority.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
But
yeah, no worries.
There was Luke Carlson's seminar. It was 2011, where Exerbotics had their machines on there, and I went in. Of course, I test drive everything, and we're there, and I test drive Exerbotics, and for some reason, I got on that machine, and the guy who built like a bodybuilder who was promoting the machine put me on the chest machine. And never before or since did I have such a pump and obliteration of my chest on a machine ever in the history of my life. Now, that was Exerbotics. So, again, ARX people, I tried it a while ago. It just didn't have the impact sense on me. I'm going to try it again because I'm a real person and I want to find out for my own. See, I'm selfish for my own self-interest. Selfishness, self-interest. Yeah. I'm interested in it. So the jury's not out there, but again, is it a step in the better direction? Let me discover that for my own interest.
Yeah, sure.
I do this out of fascination of my own interest. I'm interested in what works. I'm interested for my own knowledge.
I'm curious about this chest pump.
If I get on that machine,
and
it delivers the goods, then I will say, okay, I was wrong. Okay, I'll be the first one in line to admit it. I'll stand in front of the line and say, okay, Exerbotics, you're better than I thought you were. But years ago when I tried it, it didn't have that sense about it. But the jury's out on that yet.
Yeah, fine, absolutely. Let's just talk about the Exerbotics for a moment. I know the name. In fact, I think I have someone in the membership who uses their kit, I believe. How is that different to ARX? Is it similar technology or? I
don't recall. Okay. I really don't recall. But you'd have to ask somebody that knows more about that equipment because, like I said, I tried it one time and I walked around with a pump on my chest that wouldn't leave me for about 5 hours. So I'm
curious. Why do you think that was? Why do you think it was able to stimulate such a?
The various reasons. Because I had never used it before.
Yeah, novelty, right?
And sometimes things that you haven't done before, once you use it one time, and I've said this before, it impresses you instantaneously. I'm certainly wouldn't be surprised if the ARX doesn't impress people immediately, but it may or may not be a one-night stand, so to speak.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. I mean, yeah, fine. I mean, obviously, I know people that have used ARX over a very long period of time and continue to be impressed by the results it provides. But then, I may have a selection bias there. I've not spoken to everyone who's ever used ARX. So, yeah, I'm open to hearing those opinions for sure.
Well, that spawns a thought for me, if you don't mind. There was a chapter in the former Super Slow manual called The Non-Need for Variation. You need variation. You need to vary your workouts. Not only do you need to vary your workouts, you need to vary the speed of movement sometimes. You need to adapt to different changes of protocol because the body is a genius at adaptation. It will sense exercise as a daily skill, as a daily toll, and you must change it. That doesn't mean you reduce the intensity of the effort, that you must vary. Sometimes, as we discussed briefly on before, it's by feel. Don't pre-plan your workout. You never know what's going to happen. Don't pre-plan it. Go in there and say, you know what? And it sounds very generic and juvenile, but no. I need this, this, and this. I need to work on this. And go in there and don't even think about speed of movement. Go in there. Sometimes I'll do an exercise like a pull down, and I will think to go in there and I'll put on a weight that would tear the roots out of most people's arms. And I'll go as slow as humanly possible on it. Just because, you know what? It's a matter of feel. I was once told that many years ago when I first was introduced to the hoist rocket equipment. Are you familiar with their equipment?
I'm not, no.
No. You're familiar with X-Force, correct?
I know of X-Force. I've never used it, though.
Okay.
But I understand how it works.
Yeah, well, I knew X-Force when they came to the country and they did their presentation at the URSA convention back in 2009. That was 10 years ago when they introduced X-Force in the United States. And I was very thrilled that they were there, and I worked with them, and I helped promote them and whatnot. And next door to them was the hoist equipment. And I decided to go over there out of accident of fate and start using their equipment. It was amazing. The plate-loaded hoist rocket equipment, the Select, even better than the Selectorize. Any plate-loaded equipment always better than Selectorize for some reason. I don't know why, but they just are. They deliver the goods. Nothing like levering resistance. That doesn't take a lot to build it. And I said, is the engineer here? Which I've done in the past. I always ask for the engineer, even at Cybex, Nautilus, whoever it was. I wanted to find the engineer. So the name escaped me, but his name was Randy. He's no longer with the company. I think he's a consultant. But I said, Randy, how'd you do it? He said, Dave, we've been at it at that time for over 35 years. We've been working on our equipment. We've been in the industry, engineering, trying to find out. And he said to me, bottom line, Dave, is we did it by feel. I go, wow. I go to Randy, that may not be scientific enough for my colleagues, but it's good enough for me. So it was interesting. They did it by feel. That's what I've always told you before. There's no science in exercise. It's an art. It's the art of muscular development.
What happened to that brand? I've not heard that brand before. Did they not take
they're
off?
very popular in this country right now. Very popular.
Oh, they are?
Yes.
Right.
Hoist Rocket. Hoist, and then ROC-IT.
Was that because I remember you saying you tried a machine which you loved, but you couldn't remember what it was called. I don't know if it was that or if it was the David machine over in Europe.
David equipment, I've had. I actually owned David equipment one time.
That's not cheap.
Sure. I know there's always something new that people don't know. David equipment was very excellent. Arthur wasn't very happy with the owner at one time, from what I heard. He almost wanted to get in a fist fight with him, from what I remember. So, no, David equipment is rather good, but I don't recall what exercise piece it was. There's many. There's been Lido was very interesting equipment. I've tried so much equipment that probably I've forgotten more about the ones I've tried than I remembered.
Well, let's move on to some. I want to move on to some of the points you mentioned in prep for this that you want to talk about. One of those was the new discoveries you've had based on personal observation. Now, obviously, speed of movement we've spoken about. We've covered that in depth in previous episodes. I'm just curious. What I guess since we last spoke, so how many years that is. What are some of those new discoveries for you that you've seen it made in training?
Okay. Let's go back to the foundation. As I told you before, high intensity is not necessarily the generic one-size-fits-all training. It refers to the effort placed into the dosage of exercise that you deliver, okay? One set versus multiple sets is a moot point. Once you do a second set of any exercise in any workout, it becomes multiple. Exercise that I learned many years ago, regardless of what part of the body you work, has a systemic effect. It has a system. It overloads the system itself. Just a brief example. I'm training a woman, 77 years old, that prefers to work her upper body, okay? And many times we work our upper body and we find out that she has difficulty walking out momentarily, temporarily from the workout. And I said, didn't it feel like you just worked your legs? And she said, yeah, how come? Because it's a systemic effect, okay? So let's go back to one set versus multiple. Once you do a second set in a workout, it becomes more than one, which is multiple, okay? Never discount a second set or even a third set, okay? Don't go crazy with it, okay? I didn't say, again, high intensity refers to the effort placed in the sets that are delivered. Some people do the 3x3, the 6x6, meaning 6 sets of 6 and whatever it is, or 3 sets of 3 or whatever it is. But high intensity training, you have to look at its history and you have to dig. Yeah, Arthur Jones left us a puzzle. In order to understand, you have to put that puzzle together. You have to understand why he thought the way he thought, okay? When he first trained, he trained with multiple sets like all of us did, okay? Then he explained about the certain principles of one set to failure. That was a training system that's fit well with the Nautilus equipment. But when you're training people, you want outcome. It's the response. And I'll just say to you that don't limit you, Lawrence Neal, your sets just one set to maximum failure. Okay. It would be prudent to do an extra set. That doesn't mean you stay in the gym all day. I have found out that you're engaging more stimulus to the exercise muscles. A second or third set, okay? And I know the high intensity gods will come down on a bolt of lightning and try and kill me for that. But in order for the body becomes really adaptive again to a certain training system, and you must vary it. If you add a set, you're not going to go to hell for it, okay? And it'll be refreshing to add it, okay? Is it necessary for all people? No. Does it work for many people? Yes. But you must discover it yourself. That's why you see, forget about the drugs and all that other nonsense. Exercise merely stimulates, okay? And if you put together the right stimulus package of exercises, that doesn't mean you remain in the gym forever and ever. My workouts are no more than 20 minutes, and I do second and third sets in particular movements. But my workouts are probably less than most, okay? But I'm 15 minutes, 20 minutes, maybe, but I get a lot done. And I walk to the next exercise because I'm not out of breath. So, it doesn't bother me. But when I'm out of breath, I do wait a few moments. I have to use uncommon sense. Most people use common sense because common sense means sense among the common. Uncommon sense is what hopefully you and I have, because you don't want sense among the common. So to make a long story short, don't be worried. You can have that second set. Nobody's going to come down and hurt you for it. And it may be refreshing for your body.
Could you talk? I'd love for you to talk about this in the context of your current workouts. So could you go into detail on your current workouts in terms of exercises, number of sets? I know, again, look, I know you said there earlier, I guess you could reply to that. Well, I don't even know what I'm going to do, Lawrence, when I work out next. We're just going to pick whatever when I go in the room. But maybe you could enlighten us on that a little bit.
Well, I mean, all I can tell you, really, don't worry about what works for me. I'm just trying to give you a broader understanding of what might work better for you. Keyword is
still
might.
Helpful, though, even if we hear for you, you know.
Well, I mean, okay, let's say I will do an upper body with some leg press. I might do a couple of leg presses in there. And if I'm doing a pull down, I might do a behind neck pull down behind the head. And then the next exercise might be a front grip pull down for variation of the stimulus of the muscles engaged. And I might go back, or I might go up to a front grip pull down, which is pronated grip, pulling it to the front. I might do those three in a row.
So, okay, so your multiple set, your second or even your third set would be on a similar movement, but likely different hand position.
And a little variation. Yeah. You can't underestimate the adaptation, the adaptation of the body. The body adapts like a genius. And once most people do habits, their training becomes habitual, and whether it's beneficial after a while, you need to vary it. So whether varying the speed of movement during those movements or varying the hand grip, bring your hands in on a front grip, pull down, doing a mid-range static hold on a bicep curl. Okay, let me tell you something about the bicep curl. If you do a couple sets of a barbell bicep, okay, and I know people might disagree with it, it may be one of the most beneficial exercises for the upper body itself, which is a barbell curl. Because of the plane of movement, because the muscles being used in the front of the body, not only the biceps, but the shoulders, the chest, the abdominal muscles, and even your legs from supporting the weight you're actually bringing out, curling out on that plane. It may be one of the most beneficial exercises known to mankind for the upper body, believe it or not. Because remember, Arthur once said, you haven't worked out hard unless you've thrown up from a series of barbell curls, so to speak. So
I remember that quote well.
Yeah, but there is credence to it. Let me tell you something else. Probably told you this before. I haven't worked my abdominals directly in over 35 years. I found out 35 years ago that it was complete waste of time. That all the exercises that you do in your workout will engage the abdominals without worrying 1 second about doing direct work.
Yeah. I can believe that. I can honestly say that since starting high intensity training probably almost 10 years ago, I've very rarely done direct abdominal work. And if I have, I've never really taken it to the same level of intensity of any other kind of, compound work.
Count yourself as one of the few intelligent guys that figure that out, in spite of the fact that I'm saying it.
Well, I wouldn't say I was intelligent enough. I just was probably lazy and didn't want to do my abs. I got lucky, maybe.
Lazy. I don't think it's lazy. No, I'll give you more than that.
All right. So I want to cover some of these other points you raised. The psychological motivation factor. Tell me what that means.
Oh, God. Using instructional employees is fun.
Okay.
I still use a stopwatch for time under load. And I often lie to the person where they're at compared to where they were last time.
Right.
And you can get people to go beyond what they've done for whatever that is worth. But you have to use that white lie.
Mm.
And they love it when you lie because they go ahead of what they did earlier. So they're very excited over the fact, you lied to me, didn't you? I said, yeah, of course I did. You knew that. But the idea is to inspire. The inspiration comes from genuine motivation, from watching the person duly engaging that resistance. Not the dread instructional rhetoric, even in high intensity that you hear. Holy, you know what? I couldn't train listening to that. I want somebody that is interested in my outcome. And you have to find a way. You find a way to do that by just individualizing the process. It's not easy at first. Some people, it takes a while to figure out. And once you find the program, then you inspire them. But you have to make them feel beyond special. And they are beyond special if they're capable of doing exactly what you tell them to do. And once they know that it's about them, it's got nothing to do with you. I said, my ego is checked in at the door. It's all about you. Let's find out what works best for you, and I'll inspire you to do that. So what it is really hard to describe other than how I described it, because each individual case, I'll see certain things that they do, certain techniques that they've picked up, and I will say how good they are. And it hits home. They're happy to hear that somebody is actually telling them how good they are, other than the outside world where it can be really really bad because most people don't care. So when you care, people pick that up.
Totally. And I love the, your encouraging way of training people. One of the questions I had for you on this is, when you train someone who trains honest, who claims they train honest and train with diligence, as you would say, in terms of training to muscular failure, right? Now, have you ever had a moment with a client where they said they train a failure and you just don't feel like they have? Or do you just put that down to you not really knowing and them knowing best? Because I'm just curious when you would... So someone says, I've gone to failure, I'm done, but you're not convinced yourself. Would you make them do more work? I'd love to know how you would personally address that type of situation, because I've had that with people before.
You have to look into training, the origins of failure and where they came from and how they came about. The next podcast interview, I'll give you a history on that. But the word failure itself, and that's going to upset people, means to fail. You train for success. If you watch people train the so-called failure, you're going to find out that it exhibits itself differently across the board. Okay? Train as hard as you can. Just be honest with the set that you're doing. I don't know what so-called failure means, but if you train as well as you could, we don't look back on it. You don't look at somebody, you could have trained harder. If you trained harder, you could have gotten better results. That's the reason why I don't get results, because they haven't trained harder. That's nonsense, okay? That turns the exercise into drudgery, okay? You want to help people out. You encourage them. As trained. You don't want to turn this whole thing into lying on the floor after a workout. Your body's telling you something. There's some protective margins that have been imposed upon, and you've done something wrong there, okay? Take a step back. If any of you trainees or trainers out there are imploring or doing training to failure where you lay on the floor after a workout, I'm going to tell you right now, it's counterproductive. You want to succeed at training, take the failure out of the equation. Do not call it failure. Now, if you call it failure, fine, I don't care. I'm just trying to convince those that change the wording about it. Train to succeed, not to fail. And success is the bottom line in training. Train as hard as you can in the moment that you have it. You wouldn't believe the results. And I'm going to tell you one other thing. Recovery is not linear. It's a crapshoot, and it'll show you things that you won't even believe if you observe it, if you track recovery. You can train some people 7 days a week, and you could train some people only once a week because of their so-called physiological and psychological recovery. So recovery, the experts know nothing about recovery, because if you really look at recovery, Arthur knew about it. If you train to so-called failure, 50% of your recovery happens after the first 3 seconds of an exercise, generically. After that, it's a crapshoot. You'd be surprised that I can train somebody I trained somebody 3 days this week. 3 days. Monday, Wednesday, Sunday. And the progress went up, not down. Of course, I trick them a little bit to get that number too. But again, Lawrence, recovery is not linear. It's a crapshoot. Nobody knows anything about it. It's up to you to find out how a person so-called recovers. Okay? And I know people are going to disagree with it, but I'm going to tell you right now, nobody knows anything. Neither do I. I'm getting as close as I can.
I don't think. I wonder actually if that many people would disagree with you, because there's been, as we know, with all of the research that's been done on this, like you said, it's a crapshoot, and there's a spectrum. There are people that, like you say, need fairly long time to recover, 7 days, what have you, or over, and then some people recover in 24 hours. So it just means that you can't take the average of that, obviously, and apply that to yourself, right? You have to, like you say, figure out for the individual, understand what you require. Now, I'm curious, when I spoke to you before about this, you were like, well, it takes two to tango. They'll tell you when they're ready to train again or not. But do you use, things like performance as a proxy to figure out if someone's recovered or not? Like, do you have any tips on how to optimize someone's recovery? And also a second part of that is, does that recovery change? So sometimes they might need a few days, other times they might need an entire week. So talk to me about how you might tailor that for clients and understand it for them.
Yeah, there's an economic issue as well. Obviously, if you train 7 days a week, that's 7 times $100 of workout, $700. So, there's an economic issue there too. Okay, I can't afford to train that much. But if you're rich enough that I could probably, and some people, and they do recover that quickly. So how do I figure that out for each person? The situations and people's lifestyles are so diametrically opposite that you figure that into the equation. Sure. Everybody's different. So, the best answer I can give you is generically, okay, forget about the once a week. You could probably train 2, 3, 4 times a week. And you probably could get benefits in most of your customers, okay? The idea is, where's the beef? Where's the beef? People want results. People think they're getting results. Hold on one second.
Okay. David, you're supposed to turn your phone off for these.
That's okay. It won't bother anything. It's
all right. No one listens to this anyway, David. It's fine.
No. You got to understand out there, this once a week dogma is just that.
Cool.
Once a week, 10-10, all this stuff doesn't fit. Not a one size fits all. Great business concept for a few people, okay, but you're going to find out on your own the recovery is diametrically opposite to each individual. It's going to be a fascination to find out what works. I'd say generically 2 to 3 to 4 times a week in a nutshell, yes, and there are exceptions to that rule. Again, lifestyle has a lot to do with it. People have high-intensity lifestyles like you. You may need a little bit more rest, okay? Maybe you say, I worked out so hard. I worked so hard. I'm tired. I'm going to skip a workout. Don't worry. You built the foundation. Nothing's going to happen there.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really quite infrequent at the moment because I hurt my shoulder playing basketball like an idiot.
No. You're pursuing something you enjoy doing. It's not being idiotic. You're having fun. It happens. It happens with everybody. Sometimes I use a heavy weight and I say, yeah, maybe I shouldn't use it. But I never hardly get injured from my workouts. So.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, you're looking in great shape yourself.
Yeah, well, I doing the same thing I've always done, even more so. I figured out some things as I age.
How old are you now?
62.
You're looking excellent.
Oh, I'm in good shape. I'm not in stage shape right now. Would I ever do it again? Hard to say. But like I said, I just take advantage of what I have and figure out what's best for me and have fun with it.
Because I saw your presentation at the 21 convention that you did a while back, and you took your blazer off at some point, and I was just like, "Whoa! Look at the size of his arms."
Yeah, it was hot in there, and I was sweating.
Yeah,
it was still hot in there. No, it wasn't a show-off thing, but.
Did you have a few of the young lads come up to you saying, "What do you do for your arms?" You must have.
No, there was one German guy that really liked what I had to say. Actually, there's a few people that came up to me and said, "I like your way of putting it out there. You tell it like it is. Mm-hmm. You don't worry about the response. You go for it. I love your passion for it." Listen, that's just in my DNA. That's the way I am.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I'll certainly link it up in the show notes of this. So, going back to you for a second in terms of your own, training yourself. So, okay, so like you said, there, not looking to do any bodybuilding contests anytime soon. Are you? I mean, last time we talked about diet. Are you? Do you still kind of track your calories and that kind of thing, or do you just eat, however you feel is enough at the moment? Do you track that? Like, talk to me about that a little
Usually, in today's era of calories, it is so simple. They have calories in everything. Everywhere you go has calories listed everywhere. Fast food, everything that you can eat practically at the supermarket has calories. So yeah, I'm aware of the calories during the week, and I go off on the weekends.
Okay, so you weekends you'll chill out a little bit and maybe splurge.
Yeah, get lazy and splurge. Exactly. You're aware of your calorie intake. Yeah, of course. If you've been counting calories, I've been counting calories for as long as I've been a trainer.
Do you
about that?
Do you put it in like an app, like MyFitnessPal or anything like that?
I'll put it in the brain.
Oh, right. So you'll just right. So you'll just kind of add it up as you go through your day, but you won't keep a record.
When it comes to numbers, I'm a freak. When it comes to that, for some reason, I have a math mentality in my brain. It goes off, For some reason, numbers are. I'm very, very. I can predict numbers like you wouldn't believe, and fascinated with numbers, but I can't tell you that I could win the lottery at that aspect. Now, I'm not.
So what, it covered most of the stuff I want to talk to you about, David, but, is there anything else you want to talk about? I mean, we've both got a bit of time. Any topics you want to discuss before we kind of wrap up?
I think we covered a lot. It's interesting. Many years ago, I met a guy by the name of Bob Sands. I'm going to tell you this. This is not bragging or anything, but it will come off that way.
You've told this story before.
Bob Sands. Yeah, Bob Sands.
The mathematician.
Huh?
The mathematician.
Oh, yeah, he was a genius mathematician, graduated Duke University. Hung out with Steve Reeves.
Yeah.
He had 3 gyms that forever I asked people that from that era, did you ever hear of Bob Sands? No, I may have been a gypsy or whatever. No. Finally, somebody showed up that did know about him and could verify. He had 3 gyms in Miami in the 1950s, okay, where it would justify the fact that he was with Reeves, Reg Park, Steve Klasanen, and, I told you the funny stories about that. I think Bob has passed on. I don't know where. He was working with, he was actually had to go visit a neurosurgeon client of mine this is years ago. But back in the early 90s, I tell you this story, Bob was working out where I was a trainer at Williams Island, which is right next door to where I live. And he says, I need to pull you back into the office. What's he want with me? Here's a guy that's a genius, seen them all. He's fascinated by physical culture. Guy that was, again, a chip in a casino. Not many people knew of him, but he knew the era and he was a genius, really. He didn't pass himself off as that. He looked like a strange guy, but I knew that guy was an eccentric genius, like Arthur Jones, something like that. And he pulled me back in the office. This is back in 1993. And he said to me, he shut the door, locked the door, and he said, young man, he said, I've been around Steve Reeves, Reg Park. I've been around the best of that era. I've observed many more recently. He said, don't let it go to your head that you're the best I've ever seen. And coming from him, it was quite astounding. It shook me from my head to toe.
Clearly, if you still remember.
Tell too many people about it, but I'll tell you now about it.
Well, you've told it on 2 podcasts, so you've told thousands of people.
Well,
I reckon it's gone to your head, David.
No, it's just one of those things where, it's just what it is really, when it comes down to it, nobody cares. It's like Carlin said, nobody cares about you. But you know what? I care about them, so that's why I use my best that I've learned over the years to try and help people train as well as they can. And I've discovered things that were wrong, that I see as wrong, and I see that can be righted. And there are people in high intensity who disagree with me, but that's okay.
Absolutely.
Maybe eventually they'll go out on their own and learn what they learn on their own outside the plantation, so to speak.
Yeah, it's a healthy disagreement most of the time. It's fine that we disagree with each other. It's an opportunity to learn something.
Well, yeah, but you agree with me 100% of what I said all the time.
What's that? Say that again.
I said, of course, you agree with me 100% of what I have to say.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Never. Yeah, I never disagree.
No, it's just, again, I have to be honest with myself.
Yeah.
In order to be honest with you guys.
Well, what I find is when we talk, though, like I might see something. This is something I probably already said, but I feel like it deserves a second mention. Is when I see you post something on social media. It's got no, it's no tonality. There's no context. It's just a sentence, and everyone's going to interpret it differently. Some people aren't going to understand it. There's been numerous times where I've said, David, what the hell does that mean? And then we have a conversation, and maybe at first we disagree with one another, but then we discuss something for 20 minutes. It happened in this interview. We talked about machines and risk and injury, but what happens is when you talk about something long enough and you start digging into you start developing an understanding of each person's point of view, then you realize actually you agree on more than you thought, and that's the reality, I think, with everyone or most of the people in not only in high intensity training, but even resistance training period. So the likes of James Krieger and Dr. Brad Schoenfeld and, the so-called kind of high volume advocates, right? There's a lot more that I think we all agree on than we disagree on.
I found one of Schoenfeld's book at a thrift store with, I think, a DVD in it and something. I haven't looked at it yet.
Must have been quite old school.
Oh, well, no, I don't know. It's all, it's all user-friendly stuff. I kind of browse through it, yeah. And Schoenfeld had it, yeah. I found one of his books. It was quite funny. I said, I got to buy that.
Well, did you enjoy it? Did you learn anything?
Well, I haven't looked at it as much as I wanted to because I haven't had the time, but it's in my library somewhere.
He's been on my podcast, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, have you heard that one?
I think he might be good. I haven't listened to him. I think he might be really good because he disagrees with Fred Hahn.
Oh, yeah. Them two have quite a history, don't they? But yeah, he's been on the podcast twice, actually, Brad, and very interesting. I think it's just healthy to step outside of the high intensity training community and discuss these ideas with others. So I encourage people listening to this, if you want to, accelerate your own learning, I would listen to what Brad has to say as well. Question I had for you, David, going back to your physique, you're 62, you said, aren't you? You said, right? Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you've held on to, a lot of your muscle mass, if not all of it. Would you say you've lost any muscle since being in your quote unquote prime, or are you in your prime?
It's hard to say. Not according to people I know, but of course I'm my worst critic. I think sure. I need to gain a little muscle back. So who knows?
Do you find it harder now at your age, or do you find it harder now at your age, or
harder to maintain it?
Yeah, and grow additional. Yeah, and maintain it. Yeah.
Remember one thing about working out. Okay, I'm going to tell you how you should approach it and everybody else approach it. Mm-hmm. You're aging. Okay, you go in the workout with a thought of trying to add as much muscle as you can. But after the fact, you have to be honest with it. You're basically going there with that mindset, but after you're done, you realize that you're just trying to maintain the muscle you've built over the years. That's all it is with aging. So all you're trying to do, but you go in with the mindset of trying to add as much muscle as you can. You can't go in saying, I'm going to add more muscle, but you're going with that thought. And then after the fact, you know that you're just trying to maintain the level that you've built over the years.
Do you know what question for you, David? I'd be very curious, assuming you tracked this probably over your lifetime. Do you, a lot of what I see quite a lot in among the veterans in high intensity training is they'll say, like most people, they'll put on maybe 10, 20 pounds of muscle in their first few years of training, right? And then after that, it's a tough slog. It's, 1 pound, 2 pounds a year. I'd love you to just walk us through your own journey in that regard. So do you know, like, how much, for instance, what you weighed if you kept body fat the same, right? What you weighed when you were kind of 30, what you weighed at 40 and 50. Like, I'd love to know for you how much muscle you put on over your training career, if that's something you know or even track.
Graduated high school and I weighed 158 pounds, if I recall correctly. Right now I weigh around 170 pounds. I think you can't really say specifically about that, but you have to compare that almost to sports. See how people mature at a particular time. And in sports, Federer, with the exception in tennis, was phenomenal. I wish he would have won.
Yeah, I didn't see the match, but I heard it was a great final, and he lost that.
And really, maturation, you say you're better. And with bodybuilders, it's an interesting thing. They keep thinking they added muscle when they're in their 50s and 60s. And I just laugh at that because basically it's an illusion. Body weight comparisons over the years, I probably have a little bit more body fat than I used to, therefore the gain weight. But you mature, basically, you'll mature in your 30s. And like I said, after that, you're not going to gain more muscle. It's just not the way the human body is unless you use drugs that you haven't used before, unless you use growth hormone. I suspect that to be the case. I refuse to do any of that stuff. So,
when do you think the gains actually come to a halt? In your 40s, or?
I mean, each person differs.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say generically, that's a really good question because people will disagree. Oh no, I got bigger when I was in my 50s. Again, that's by and large a fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
How the hell can that happen? Like saying an athlete, he got better when he was in his 50s. There are exceptions. Not in the 40s. There's exceptions to the rule. Obviously, you have to parallel it with sports because it involves the aging process. You look at Tom Brady and look at how he's got the genetic. He keeps staying relative with age. I'd say up until your early 40s, mid 40s, but after that, you have to grab onto it. You got a hook to hold on.
Do you know, I saw a picture of Tom Brady. His physique is actually not that impressive, is it? Yeah, he's this incredible athlete.
No, he just picked the right parents.
Right. Yeah. But like I know there's plenty of individuals who you can see these in all sorts of sports where they don't necessarily look that impressive physically, but they're highly skilled. You could say someone like Kevin Durant, right, in the NBA is like that, very skinny, but clearly, as Jim Flanagan put it, hooked up, able to generate a lot of force despite what might look like someone who, can't do that.
That spawns a thought for me, if you might. It's interesting because adding muscle tissue is there's a point which you've added too much tissue and it affects functionality in sports. But since it's even playing field, you don't see it as much. In other words, everybody trains with weights and all these other training routines. So you don't see it as much. But, people claim that if you have more muscle, you produce more power. But after a while, that becomes a law of diminishing returns because you have to carry that muscle tissue. You see that in mixed martial arts when when the heavily muscled guy becomes gassed out in the second round and gets knocked out.
Yeah. David, this has been a massive pleasure, as always. Thank you for coming back on the podcast. I'm really excited for people to listen to this. I think people are going to find this super interesting. What is the best way for people to find out more about you?
They're on Facebook or my email, exarchives at AOL.com, xarchives.
Got it.
Just email me. I'm on Facebook under my name, real name, David Landau. Listen, you guys out there, I can help you. That's not going to cost you an arm and a leg. I'm not going to give you a generic per hour rate, per hour workout, per hour weight.
Okay, so people who are interested in that should just drop you an email to start that conversation. Yeah, cool. All right, and I'll link to that all in the show notes. So if you don't manage to note down David's email, please go to the show notes for this one, which will be over at highintensitybusiness.com/David-Landau, Landau. And that will send you there, so you'll be able to find all the contact details. And also, if you do end up following David on Facebook, you'll be able to see all of his entertaining political rants, which are always quite entertaining. He's normally insulting someone or starting some sort of controversy.
Listen. Okay. I know all you Trump detractors out there. He's going to win in the landslide. And I told people that almost a couple years now. And regardless of the so-called polls, forget it. It's a fantasy land. These polls are biased. They're slanted. And Trump will win huge. And if I'm wrong about it, which I won't be,
sure,
I'll be the first one to admit it.
You can't possibly like him, though, as a person.
No, I don't like him. I love him.
Are you serious?
That's serious.
Wow. I mean,
you have to. This is the phrase I use. I'm sure he's the genius you don't know.
Right. Yeah.
You have to see the way he handles people. I'm familiar with handling people. I see what he's doing.
Yeah.
I see what he's doing, even though it comes off rough and ranting and sometimes, but I know this. I know what he's doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't watch enough. I don't watch enough of his public appearances to really form an opinion. But obviously, I know of some of the controversy, and from what I have seen about him, sometimes he'll say something, and I think either you're trying to be clever, or you're just being a total arse. That's kind of my take. But again, I don't venture into politics very often on this podcast because, one, it's not massively relevant, and I'm quite ignorant on the topic in a lot of ways. So,
well, here's the thing. He's calling it the way you wish the president would call it. Finally, straightforward, straight shooter. He gives the press plenty of time to interview him. He's not hiding away from. He is there. He is telling you as he's calling it as he sees it.
Sure.
There are certain things. Okay, if the listeners disagree, so be it.
They're all going to unsubscribe from my podcast now, David, after this. No, I hear you. Actually, I do see him do that. I do see him say it like it is sometimes, and that is somewhat of an admirable trait, I think.
Everybody else that has been there has been scripted. It's all an act. This presidential, he's not presidential. Thank God. Who wants presidential? I want real. I don't want an act. I don't want an actor up there reading off a teleprompter. I want somebody coming off that teleprompter and says, like I said, calls it as he sees it. If you disagree with him, so be it.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to pass the baton to someone who actually knows, not that you don't know, I'm talking about myself here, to someone who actually knows what they're talking about when it comes to politics before I get myself in trouble. So I'll stop that there. But David, I really, again, appreciate you coming on. Really enjoy talking to you. You're such a unique individual, and I always learn a ton, genuinely, from our conversations. As I said to you, I really enjoy just listening back to our first two podcasts, and I always love listening to an old podcast because it's like I'm reading an old journal entry. So I'm reading, something you're teaching me. I'm reading who I was back then. Like I'm seeing that, and it's such a weird thing to be able to do. And it's so empowering, and it's so interesting to be able to do that. And so I appreciate all of the stuff you've taught me.
Trust me, we're learning every day. We observe something new, something to put in the files. Of course, I've changed my mind over the years for reasons that are important to understand what really works and what I assumed worked in the past. Listen, I'm a champion mistake maker myself. That's the only way you learn.
Sure, absolutely. And to everyone listening, I already obviously pointed to the URL for this one, which will be over at highintensitybusiness.com/David-Landau. And for all episodes, please go to highintensitybusiness.com/podcast. And until next time, thank you very much for listening.
Discover how to achieve your health and fitness goals, become a great personal trainer, and build a successful, high-intensity training business. Check out highintensitybusiness.com. highintensitybusiness.com.